What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we begin our talks on the Undead Warlock, not to be confused with the Undying Warlock, which we will talk about next week, but the Undead Warlock, one of the more recent additions in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I am excited to jump into a very flavorful and hopefully powerful subclass, but before we jump into things, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure to share the video with your friends, and of course click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. We're very close to our year's goal of 5,000 subscribers, and I think we actually can do it. We are on track to get there, but we need your help for this final push for the last few months of the year. We can get there, but please make sure to share the video, make sure to subscribe, all that good stuff so that we can reach that goal. So what is an Undead Warlock? Well, to me, it's interesting that we are discussing the Undead Warlock prior to the Undying, but that's just how alphabetical works. Essentially, Undying came a lot earlier and was kind of your niche when it came to something similar to the Undead, right? You are getting powers from some kind of undead or supernatural being that has beaten death in some way. Strahd comes to mind. It is mentioned in that, but then we get this, and this was kind of a rewrite, essentially, kind of what they learned from the other one, and then they have kind of made this as, this is what we've learned, let's give some kind of update to that. And so this is a little bit more of a modern take on that. Of course, you'll get my thoughts on the Undying next week, and we will go through how I feel about that. But for this week, this is if you wanted to tie this into something like Tomb of Annihilation, right? With Asirak, you've got that as a possibility, right? You've got several different options that you can choose from, and of course there are plenty that would fit into this category, but there's a lot of fun to be had. But how does it feel mechanically? Let's find out. As always, we start with our expanded spell list, and this one is interesting, right? We get Bane, which is fine, right? We get our False Life, Blindness, Deafness, Phantasmal Force. We do get Cloud Kill, which I really like, as well as Greater Invisibility. That's a big deal. Really, where this one kind of gets weird is 3rd level, right? Because we get Phantom Steed and Speak with Dead. These are strange options, I guess, just because they are ritual spells, and warlocks and rituals aren't really that much of a thing that happens a lot, right? So unless you take the ritual caster feat and kind of try to make things work a little bit better, then maybe this isn't quite the best thing for you. But yeah, some of these choices are a little strange. I get why they are here thematically, but mechanically I don't think that they're all that great, right? This list is very mediocre in my eyes, and so for me, just because I would take something like Cloud Kill, most likely I would take something like Greater Invisibility. Bane is not bad, although you could do Hex if you want to do more damage, Bane if you want to do the debuff. False Life is fine. Ultimately, for me, I would give this like a 5 out of 10. I think this expanded spell list is not the best, and at the very best, it is just very situational, right? All of these spells, rules as written, are not ones that are just automatically added to your list, right? These are ones that you have to go out of your way to take, and you have a very limited list of spells that you can have as a warlock, and to me, a lot of them are just not worth it. At level 1, we only get one feature, which is definitely a departure from the last few weeks that we have had, but this feature has a lot in it, so don't worry, it's pretty dense actually. So as a bonus action, we can actually transform for 1 minute, and we gain 3 different benefits by doing so. Number 1, we get temporary hit points equal to 1d10 plus our warlock level. Once per turn, when we hit a creature with an attack, we can force it to make a wisdom saving throw and become frightened if it fails until the end of our next turn. And we are immune to the frightened condition. We can do this a number of times per day equal to our proficiency bonus, and of course get them all back after a long rest. This is pretty cool, right? And this is really what the entire subclass hinges on. I generally am a fan of transformation type features as long as they are done correctly, and this one honestly I think is done correctly. Gaining some temp HP is great. 1d10 plus warlock level, that's not bad at all, and I like how that can scale. There's a lot of potential there, and I think that's very powerful. The main reason I'm here though is the frightened condition on an attack roll, right? When we hit a creature with an attack, we can force it to make a wisdom saving throw. What comes through my mind, of course, is Eldritch Blast, right? When we are hitting creatures with this, we can now hit them and possibly frighten them with one of our most reliable options out there. That is huge, right? I think that this is an absolutely incredible way to make this work, and it gets better and better and better as we level up, right? When we get to 5th level, we're gonna get 2 beams on our Eldritch Blast. That means if one beam misses, we get to just try again, and we can possibly repeat this every single turn. So we now have twice the chance of getting this frightened effect, and yeah, there's a wisdom saving throw to it, sure, but this also is something that's very spammable, right? We have a minute's worth, a number of times per day equal to our proficiency bonus, which generally should be plenty. And I really like that. And being immune to the frightened condition, maybe not so useful here at 1st level, but definitely will be as we get to higher and higher levels. Really a very strong feature. This is a solid 9 out of 10. I think that this is very, very well done, and honestly I think I would give it a 10 if it wasn't based on a wisdom saving throw. That's probably my only gripe. Besides that, this is really good. At level 6, we get to add a couple more features to our belts here, and so we are going to, number 1, be able to not have to eat, drink, or breathe, which is kind of cool. Definitely could be some nice role play moments there. But in addition to that, whenever we hit a creature with an attack and roll damage against that creature, we can do 2 things. We can, 1, replace the damage with necrotic damage if we want to. And as long as we are in our form of dread, which like I said before, we should be able to be in pretty much any combat, we get to roll 1 additional damage die when determining the necrotic damage that the target takes. So now with our Eldritch Blast, we can turn this from force damage over to necrotic damage and deal extra damage, right? So that's doubling the damage on one of the beams. Now, of course, this is once per turn, right? So this isn't going to fire on every single beam. So only 1 beam would be transformed to necrotic damage and then have an extra D10 added on, right? But still, that's doubling the damage on 1 beam and turning it to necrotic damage, which shouldn't be a big deal for the most part, as long as you're not dealing with certain undead and those kind of creatures. Then most of the time you're gonna be good. It's very ironic that this is a creature that is probably not going to be very strong fighting against undead creatures, even though you are gaining power from some kind of undead entity. I think that's kind of interesting, but either way, this is still a really, really cool feature. Being able to deal extra damage, and of course this isn't limited to just our Eldritch Blasts, just to me, that makes the most sense here, right? When building one like this, which if this does well enough, we will do later this week, then it seems to me like the best way to go about this is to be an Eldritch Blast focused type of build and just build that up, build that up, build that up through invocations, through all kinds of other means. And this is very much getting us there, which is really cool. Overall, this is really nice. The eat, drink, or breathe thing is take it or leave it from me. What's really great though is being able to deal extra damage, and like I said, the form of dread is very reliable in how often we can use it, so I'm not really worried about that either. This is a solid 8 out of 10. I think this is very, very good, and I really can't complain about this really at all. Again, we're only limited by the number of times that we have for form of dread, and generally that should be fine since it is following our proficiency bonus, so it should be all good. At level 10, we get Necrotic Husk, and this is going to further bolster our undead-centered abilities that we've been talking about so far. So with this, we now have resistance to necrotic damage, and if we are in our form of dread, we actually become immune to it. On top of that, whenever we are reduced to 0 HP, we can use our reaction to get back up to 1 HP and basically have a little necrotic explosion. Within 30 feet of us, we can choose what creatures are affected, and we deal 2d10 plus our warlock level in damage, no saving throw. We then gain 1 level of exhaustion, which is a bit tough, and once we use this reaction, we can't do so again until we finish 1d4 long rests. That's an important distinction right there. It is not 1 rest, could be, but definitely not guaranteed. The necrotic resistance / immunity is nice depending on your situation. This definitely is going to vary depending on what campaign you're in. You know, if you're fighting through the 9 hells, right, and dealing with a bunch of demons and devils and that kind of thing, this may not come up as often, right? This may not come up all the time. However, there are plenty of opportunities that this could come up and definitely could be very, very useful. So it's definitely far from useless by any stretch of the imagination here. And of course, being able to drop to 0 HP and pop back up with 1, we've talked about this a ton whenever we take things like the half orc, right? With having the relentless endurance, it's basically the same thing there, except this adds an explosion of damage. 2d10 plus our warlock level. That's pretty good. I don't mind that at all. That's pretty good damage, honestly. Right now, that's 2d10 plus 10, which is a maximum of 30 damage. Not bad there, not bad, and it's only going to scale up. The level of exhaustion is really tough. Now, we talked a lot about just how detrimental exhaustion can be way back when we were talking about barbarians and the berserker using frenzy, right? I'll put that up in the iCard above for you right there. Also, make sure to check out my fix for that subclass as well. We made that a lot better, but either way, this is kind of tough. Now, in one way, this actually is better than Frenzy, actually, because we actually are forced to rest before we can do it again, which would take away that level of exhaustion. There was no such restriction with Frenzy right before, but so with this, there is such a restriction, and so we're not going to be stacking up levels of exhaustion based on this feature. So that's fine. It's only ever going to cause 1 at a time, and so that's fine. That's not nearly as bad as the alternative with what we've discussed in the past. Either way, I think this feature is not bad. The exhaustion is tough, and that definitely hurts. But the rest of this is really pretty good. The immunity and resistance to necrotic, again, is going to be very much dependent on where you are and what you're fighting. Definitely could be really good. May not be something that comes up at all. Just depends. But being reduced to 0 HP and popping up to 1, that absolutely will come up. Being able to have an explosion when somebody does that to you, that's also pretty good as well. And so to me, it's kind of worth it. And I really don't think that this is as bad as what it sounds. To me, I think this is a solid 8 out of 10. Even with that level of exhaustion, I still think that this feature is nice because, again, then when it gets to our turn, assuming we haven't been taken down by then, we can Misty Step out, we can just kind of get to a safe place and not be worrying about, you know, being dead. I think that that's really, really helpful. So I still think this is a solid feature overall. At level 14, we get Spirit Projection, and if we didn't already have enough transformation, we are going to do it again, right? This is another way that we can do that, and we'll just see how this does. So as an action, we can project our spirit from our body. Think things like, I don't know, Doctor Strange, right? When the Ancient One knocks him out of his body, right? That would be a way to do it. Or while he's sleeping, he was reading, right? It's kind of the same thing. So the body you leave behind is unconscious and in a state of suspended animation. Our spirit resembles our mortal form and in almost every way, replicating all of our stats, but not our possessions. We don't get to bring our stuff. Any damage or other effects that apply to either or will affect the other, and our spirit can remain outside of our body for 1 hour or until our concentration is broken. Very important there. It is concentration based. When our projection ends, our spirit returns to the body, or the body will teleport to the spirit. Either way, whichever one you want. While you are doing this, you gain the following benefits. You have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage for both sides. When we cast a spell that is conjuration or necromancy, we do not have to use verbal or somatic components or material costs that are not considered costly. We have a flying speed equal to our walking speed with hover and we can move through creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain. And of course, the same wording applies to pretty much anything that has this incorporeal type of thing to it, where we take damage if we stop inside of a creature or object. And while we are using our Form of Dread, once per turn, when we deal necrotic damage, we can regain hit points equal to half the damage dealt. There's a lot going on here, right? And this is, of course, is a once per day feature, but this is pretty crazy, right? This is a way to give ourselves free resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, right? So as long as we're not taking damage on both ends, we should be fine, right? We should be okay. Now, the Conjuration and Necromancy School, being able to take away the components and that kind of thing, it's not as good as what it sounds, just because we don't get access to a ton that are all that great, right? At least ones that are ones that I'm concerned about having components, right? It's mainly our teleportation spells, right? Just on the Conjuration list. So things like Misty Step, Dimension Door, that kind of thing. That's really it. And then I think Blight is another one that would be part of this, but yeah, we don't really get access to a ton of these, at least not enough to where I'm really all that excited about it. So, that's take it or leave it for me. Flying speed, that's huge, and being able to be incorporeal, right, and go through things and objects and that kind of thing, that's pretty great. That's fantastic. And then, of course, we get to heal ourselves when we deal damage with Form of Dread. That's pretty fantastic as well. So again, this is a subclass that has done a really good job of building onto itself and taking that first level feature and just enhancing it. And I've said this from the beginning, this is a sign of good subclass design, which is great to see. Again, it's nice to see out of the later books, once WotC kind of learned how to make all of this work. They got it right on some, and then some just not even close. This is a product of some learning, and I think it does pretty good in that way. But yeah, having the resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing at 14th level and not being a barbarian is pretty great. And I think that overall this is just a absolutely fantastic feature. Just in every way, I think this is great. The only issue I have really is the concentration aspect of it. I hate that we're concentrating, so we can't do things like Hex. We can't do any kind of other concentration spells while we are doing this. But still, it's not that bad, right? Because again, we can just end concentration if we want to, and then we will go whichever way we want to. So you know, it's not all bad, but it is definitely held back in that way. Overall, though, as a complete package and how it goes with the other features so far, I still have to give this a 9 out of 10. I think it's very, very good. I can't deny just how good the resistance to damage is, the flight, the incorporealness. I can't deny just how good that is. So it's still very, very solid. So what do we think of the Undead Warlock subclass? This is a fun one, right? This is a really, really cool take on the Warlock, really focusing on that undead type of stuff that really is very common and is very much gravitated towards when it comes to Warlock type of lore, right? And I think that is very, very important to fit something like this in. That is very useful. I think you'll understand kind of my thoughts on how this was when it was just the Undying, but I think the Undead is an absolute worthy addition to the canon, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. Of course, we get our transformation through Form of Dead, which is then enhanced with Grave Touched and Spirit Projection. All of this stuff works together, right? And it gives you extra stuff as you go. Like I said, that is a sign of great design on a subclass level, which is great. Yes, the spells aren't all that great, and I'm probably not going to take half of them at least, but maybe there's a situation that you can find where this actually is very good for you. It just depends, right? Grave Touched, again, is really nice, being able to add extra damage on. Again, for me, the main use of that is going to be with Eldritch Blast, but there are plenty of other options for you if you wanted to go that way. Necrotic Husk is great for giving you a nice defensive option to be able to stay up and then possibly have a Get Off Me option with the Necrotic Explosion. And of course, Spirit Projection is an amazing transformation feature, which can be used in combination with our Form of Dread, because Form of Dread does not require concentration, to make ourselves tankier, deal damage, fly, that kind of thing. and turn us into a really potent character. Overall, this is a very strong subclass, and I can easily give this a 9 out of 10. I think this is very, very strong and very, very much worth using. I don't think it's as good as the Genie. I don't think it's as good as the Hexblade, but it's very, very, very strong and absolutely worth your time to look into and possibly build something around. So that's our ranking for today. I hope you all enjoyed that. Let me know down below your thoughts. Did I go too harsh on it? Should this have been a 10? Or was I too lenient on it? Should it have been lower? Let me know in the comments down below. Later this week, we're going to be building one of these together. And next week, we're finishing up our Warlock talks, which is going to be a lot of fun. Until then, stay safe out there. Stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.